Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
Welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. But for our radio audience here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM and WYADonline.com, we're glad that you all could be with us. Us tuning in worldwide, thanks to our friends at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music Podcast. We're glad you all could be with us as well. Well, we've heard a lot about how climate change is actually impacting the Earth and, of course, the risks that are involved there. But what if I told you that the Earth can actually help us to not only be able to thrive, but also to help us in healing as well? That's exactly what our next guest is able to address in his new book. We're excited to welcome Michael Mehta Webster to our program today. Michael's new book's just out this week, just in time for National Book Month. It's called The Rescue Effect, The Key to Saving Life on Earth. We'll talk to Michael not only about the journey he's been on as an ecologist, but also what we can learn about the Earth and also what he hopes you able to take away from the book as well. Michael, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
So I want to talk about this book because I think it's so interesting. When this was first pitched to me, Michael, I was intrigued by the title. I love the title, but actually getting into the book, it's so fascinating to think about the Earth as we kind of think about our own bodies, right, and how we're able to kind of regenerate in ways and how we can be able to aid in that when it comes to the Earth. What has it been like for you to be a part of that conversation when it comes to how we can change things here on the Earth?
Well, listen, for me, I've been working on science and conservation for a really long time and trying to understand how ecosystems work and whatnot. But in the world of conservation, we are really thinking about change on the planet and how we're losing species and there's lots of negative things going on. One of the things that I really took away from my book research and describe in the book is this really powerful force in the other direction, which is how nature has this inherent ability to help rescue things when conditions are changing. And we should be really thankful for that because it does us a lot of good.
And, Michael, the other thing that comes through in the book is something we should know as human beings, if we are learning the lesson, is that we don't always have the right answers, right? A lot of times we think we have to do something to something instead of being able to learn from and allow it just to be able to do its own thing. What was that like for you to kind of look at when it comes to the Earth and how the Earth can, if allowed, be able to help itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a really good point there, which is that, if you step back, in conservation, we hear a lot about all the species that are endangered and the things that we're, at risk of losing through extinction. And so we get this idea that I think that, everything is fragile and everything is falling apart on the planet because we're focused on those sort of most dire cases. And it's not that those dire cases aren't dire. Oftentimes they really are. But most of life is not in that category. Most species right now are already adapting to the changes that we're creating on the planet. And there's every reason to believe they're going to continue to adapt with changes in the future. I find that sort of optimistic and exciting to sort of balance out the other side of the equation, which is real reason to be concerned. There's also reasons to be optimistic.
Michael, I'm going to step back for just a second because not only are you celebrating the release of the book this week, but it is happening during National Book Month. Did it seem inevitable for you when it comes to your own interest in the ecology as well as, of course, the world? Did it seem almost inevitable that you would write a book and then it would tackle topics like this?
Not at all. It wasn't actually until a few years ago that this started seeming like something that I wanted to do. And the impetus of it was really from having, hundreds of conversations over the years with people who were really interested in nature and trying to understand what was happening to nature. And oftentimes these folks were very depressed and they were feeling a lot of anxiety about how the world was changing. And it sometimes gets people into a place of paralysis where they feel like because the world is changing in so many different ways that all hope is lost. And as an ecologist and as somebody who is studying ecosystems and conservation, I didn't tend to feel that way. And so I decided to take a look at, a sort of a deeper dive into the research to figure out, okay, where does it seem that we are in this process? And in doing so, what I came away with was this idea that we actually have a lot to be optimistic about. I think that's really important in the conversation about what we do in conservation because I find the negative to be paralyzing, and I think that we can also focus on the positive, which I find more motivating.
Michael, the other thing that comes through in this book is history. A lot of this history I had never read before, and I'm sure people who pick up the book will say, you know what, I didn't realize this too. What about that? Was history an interest of yours before the book research began, or was it just part of the research you did for the rescue effect?
Well, if I'm being 100% honest, when I first started writing the book, it probably read a little bit too much like a textbook, which I was talking about, like how ecology works. And I got some really good feedback from some colleagues and friends that said, listen, you need to figure out a way to make this more accessible. And so I went back to the drawing board and I thought about how really fascinating a lot of the stories were about how the world is changing, what people are doing. And so what you're seeing in each of those chapters is I've tried to invite people into a story that's maybe been going on for 100 years or longer, help them see what's happened in the past, but also deliver them to the point where we are today, asking lots of questions about what's going to happen in the future. And so what I'm hoping people will do is get sort of an insider view into conservation and these sorts of decisions, and maybe get to the point where they feel comfortable sort of making decisions for themselves about what they think are the right answers to some, really tough trade-off decision questions we're going to have to face in conservation.
The book literally just came out this week, Michael, but now you're adding another title to your already varied accomplishments, and that being published author. What has that been like for you to sit with, that you have a book out there now for the world to be able to read and to be able to have a conversation about?
Well, it's new enough. The book literally came out yesterday. It's new enough that I don't know that I've really sort of wrapped my head around that. But listen, at the end of the day, I wrote this book because I wanted to have a broader conversation with people about how the world is changing and what we can do about it. If this accomplishes that, then, I'll be absolutely delighted.
You've mentioned now twice in this conversation, I've noticed, Michael, your optimism versus the pessimism that sometimes we hear when it comes to the future. What is it, considering everything that we're seeing, everything that's out there, what is it that keeps you optimistic?
It's really sort of wonder and awe about nature. Nature, the diversity and the amazing stories that show up throughout the book, but also these natural abilities that nature has to be able to really take care of itself, I think are, some of the most impressive things on our planet. If you combine that with all the stuff that we can do when we choose to intervene on behalf of nature, it makes for a really powerful set of, sort of opportunities for the future.
That leads me to my last thing I want to ask you about then, Michael, because I feel like the book is, in many ways, not only a look at what has happened, but also a look ahead to what we can do and who we can be. So when people finish The Rescue Effect, what is it you hope they see as their role in the subtitle of the book, The Key to Saving Life on Earth?
Well, one of the really sort of important conclusions for me in doing this project is that the future is not cast in stone, that when we think about change on the Earth and loss of diversity, we're really at the very sort of front of whatever process we're going into. That's good news because it means we have a lot of agency. We have a lot of ability to determine what the future is going to look like based on the actions that we take now. And so what I would hope people would come away from this book is sharing some of that sense of agency and deciding to do something about it. I think probably the most important single thing we can do for life on Earth is try to slow the rate of climate change, because that's affecting all species and all ecosystems at the same time. But in addition to that, we can fight for the things that we care about. I've worked on coral reefs for a long time and devoted a lot of my career to trying to save coral reefs. I think everybody who cares about nature and cares about different species, they can make a difference in trying to save the things that they really care about as well.
It's a great conversation, a great book, Michael. I'm so glad we have you here the week of its release. Again, everyone, Michael Mehta Webster has been our guest. The new book is called The Rescue Effect, The Key to Saving Life on Earth. It is available through our friends at Amazon.com, both in print as well as a Kindle edition, or through your favorite local bookstore. If they don't have it, I'm sure they'd be glad to order it for you. And, Michael, how can our audience stay connected with you?
The best way is to first read the book, and then you can check me out on my website at New York University.
All right. Michael, congratulations to you again. I really appreciate the time.
Great. Thanks for chatting.
Okay. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Then let's go make today amazing. Take care.